Well, hello everyone, and welcome back, I hope, to another episode of Mondays with Mundy. And that's me, Jim Mundy, the historian for the Legacy Foundation at the Union League of Philadelphia. And if you watched last week's program, you know we talked about a league employee, even if it was a rather unusual league employee, because this league employee had four legs in a tail. So this week, though, we're going to do a human employee, two arms, two legs, and stuff like that. So we're going all the way back to the beginning of the league in 1863. So it's a really neat story. And our employee's name is Nunzio Finelli. He was born in Naples in May of 1835. His given name was Annunziata, but it was shortened to Nunzio. And Nunzio's father ran a large and fairly accomplished hotel in Naples. Now, Naples in the mid-19th century was part of the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, which was run by King Ferdinand II, ultimately a Bourbon, so French, but through the Spanish line. And in the beginning, everything was well, but then in the 1840s and 1850s, there was a lot of political unrest. And of course, in 1848, we had the revolutions through Western Europe as well. So it was not a good time to be in Italy or Naples. And so in April of 1858, Nunzio becomes a chef on the USS Constellation, which was the flagship of the American Mediterranean fleet when it was fighting the Barbary pirates off the coast of Africa. And apparently, Nunzio, growing up in a hotel family, obviously then learned many different jobs within the hospitality field, as we think of it today. So, but Nunzio is going to be a chef the rest of his life, basically. Okay. So the Constellation set sail for America. It will land in Philadelphia about a year later in 1859. And Nunzio immediately gets a job working at the Girard Hotel, basically in the 800 block of Chestnut Street in today's modern Philadelphia. And he also apparently, from what we can tell, got a job working at the Philadelphia Club as well. And that was at 13th and Walnut. So luckily for him, coming right off the boat as an immigrant, he gets jobs. And the rest of his life would be that same story. And actually one job, and that's the most important job, and that's the one at the Union League of Philadelphia itself. So, but there's a little bit in between. So everything is going well. Actually, Nunzio gets married in 1860 to a young lady named Elizabeth Mount, and they would eventually have 5 children, right? Nunzio is doing very well for himself. But he wants to become an American. He becomes naturalized eventually, 1868. But he's an American, and he wants to do what Americans do. And so he joined a militia unit in 1860, and we think it was the Washington Grays, because you'll see a photograph of him in what looks like a Grays uniform. But then the Civil War breaks out in April of 1861, and in August of that year, Nunzio will join the company of something called the Zouaves d'Afrique, and they were founded by Captain Charles Collis, who was an Irish immigrant to Philadelphia. And a company basically was 100 men, because not enough for a regiment, which was 1,000 men. But eventually, the Corps d'Afrique would become so well known and so popular that Collis would eventually create a regiment out of it, and that would be the 114th Pennsylvania. And so our good friend Nunzio would serve in the 114th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry Regiment. Right now, while he was in the regiment, as you can imagine, guess what he did? Besides being a soldier, he cooked. All right, so he's still using those skills that he honed in Naples in the 1850s. All right, so it is the spring of 1862. The 114th is in the Shenandoah Valley as part of the Army of the Shenandoah, commanded by General Nathaniel Banks. Their job is to clean out the Confederates. And things go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then finally, on August the 9th of 1862, at the Battle of Cold Mountain in Virginia, Finelli is wounded in the mouth, of all places, and he is now sent back to Philadelphia to recover. But apparently, his wounds were such that he would not go back to fight, and instead he was honorably discharged. And so here he is in Philadelphia in early 1863 looking for a job. And luckily for him, the Union League itself was just organized on December the 27th of 1862, and they're moving into a clubhouse in February of 1863, and they needed a chef. And so Nunzio Finelli became the first chief chef of the Union League. All right. And he would remain that until he died in March of 1886. All right. But in the meantime, there's all kinds of stuff going on, as you can imagine. So as we know, the League became one of the dominant and preeminent Civil War institutions in America, and also, therefore, in Philadelphia itself. And the League would move from a clubhouse at 1118 Chestnut Street, which was occupied in February of 1863, to that beautiful Broad Street building that opened on May the 11th of 1865. And Nunzio went with the League. And so that is the building where he really spent his career cooking for the League and its members. So now, it's in the 19th century, terms were a little fluid. So he was called the chief chef. There was also a caterer. And I think the way I understand it is the caterer had the overall responsibility for all of the food and beverage operations inside the house itself. There was also a position called the steward. And the steward ran the clubhouse itself. So at various times, Finelli was also the caterer, the head caterer, as well as the head chef. And I've even seen him referred to as the steward once or twice, but probably not that. I think he stayed in the food and beverage end of the business, if you will. So you can imagine over the years, Finelli fed many famous people, including American presidents, senators, congressmen, visiting dignitaries to Philadelphia, and things like that. The oldest menus we have in the League's archival collection that are directly attributed to Finelli date from December of 1879. One is just a generic menu, but then on December 23rd, Ulysses S. Grant and Mrs. Grant were at the League. And this is when they had just come back from their 2-year tour around the world. So Grant is no longer president, but Grant was probably, even through the 19th century into the early 20th, the most popular president in the League itself after Abraham Lincoln. So it was a big reception and dinner for Grant that night, and we had menus for that. And we'll take a look at them shortly because I have the PowerPoint to show you when all this is done. So Finelli, the family would grow to 5 children. He would branch out of the League itself, and he would open up a cafe on South 10th Street, just below Market, called Finelli's, and he would also open a cafe, actually, but not until 1876, at 1345 Chestnut Street, basically right at the intersection of Broad and Chestnut. That also was a Finelli cafe, and that one became incredibly famous and popular. So Finelli, besides just the cafes, he also had a liquor operation where he sold liquor and a cigar store as well. So, and Finelli, as the family got larger and as he became, I wouldn't say wealthy, but more middle class, if you will, he would start moving from Center City out to West Philadelphia because that was the migration pattern back then. So that's because West Philadelphia was the first real middle-class suburb in Philadelphia beginning in the 1850s. So Finelli and his family went from 22nd and Bainbridge out to 32nd and Sansom, and eventually they would live at 3403 Chestnut Street, and that is where Finelli would die on March 18th of 1866. So Finelli, as one would imagine, you can imagine he's Italian, but apparently not Catholic. He was a Mason, so he had a Masonic funeral, surprisingly enough, and he was buried at Mount Moriah Cemetery at 62nd and King Sessing Streets in Southwest Philadelphia, where quite a few League members are buried as well, including a League president, John Russell Young. So Finelli, to help with his family business, of course his children helped, but 2 of his brothers from Naples came over, and Francesco and Pasquale, and now they're buried though at Old Cathedral Cemetery at 48th and Lancaster. So they were Catholic. So an interesting family, interesting man. The historian William Woys Weaver said that Finelli in the 1860s, 1870s, and into the early 1880s was probably one of the top 5 chefs in all of Philadelphia. So it's no surprise that he was the chef at the League itself, because the League, it was a social club after all, and good food and good drink always work, as they do in the 21st century, as we know. So tell you what, let's take a look at this PowerPoint. All right, and there it is. I have to share it with all of you. And after I do that, I have to hit slideshow. Oh, come on. All right. And we do from the beginning. All right. So as you can see, I've called it Italy's first gift to the Union League, because we all know that Italy's second gift is Frank Giordano, past president. So I hope you heard that, okay? All right. So let's see what happens. Okay. right, so this is the USS Constellation as it appeared. And by the way, it still exists in Baltimore Harbor. You can go down and visit it if you'd like, but that's the ship that Finelli came over on, all right? Good old U.S. Navy. This is the 800 block of Chestnut Street in the 1850s, 1860s. It's the Continental Hotel on the left-hand side, but the Gerard House is on the right-hand side. So you're looking west. And this is Finelli in his militia uniform, we believe. So again, Washington Grays is our best guess at this point. And believe it or not, League members, you know the Washington Grays because on Broad Street, both of those bronze sculptures represent soldiers from the Washington Grays. On the north side, artillery, south side, infantry. Okay? Now, this is the uniform worn by the Zouaves d'Afrique, otherwise known as Colossus Zouaves. And you can see it was patterned after the French Foreign Legion. So the pantaloons, the shell jacket, and the wonderful piping, and of course, the cap itself. And these are soldiers from the 114th Pennsylvania in early 1863. So I doubt Finelli was in there, but you can see what they looked like anyway. Okay, so this is the Union League of 1863, where Finelli first went to work. So this is 1118 Chestnut Street, the old Hartman Coup mansion, and that's where he got his start, and that's where he got his end. Well, not the building itself. So this is the building as it looked shortly after it opened in May of 1865. Now, on the far left-hand corner, you can see that one-story room, if you will, with the shuttered windows. Okay, that was actually the a la carte dining room inside the house at that point in time. It's called the restaurant. And beneath it, you can see those windows there. That was where the kitchen was located. All right, so that's where Finelli would have been working. Okay. Now, of course, that's the ground floor of today's Broad Street building. And this is what Finelli looked like. Handsome young man, isn't he? All right. Love the way he parts his hair and all that kind of fun stuff. Just a really, really interesting looking guy, isn't he? And this is the restaurant itself that I just referred to and when I looked at the League House. So this is what it looked like in 1887, so shortly after Finelli died, but it's the room that he would have been cooking for, and I'm sure was in it many, 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 many times. And the door that you see on the left-hand side went into the pantry that then went downstairs. The food was brought up by a dumbwaiter. Because above this room was the banquet room that is still there to this day. So that's how they got food up and down, stairs and a dumbwaiter. And this is called the Oyster Cafe. This is a later photograph from 1902, and it is on the ground floor of the Broad Street building. So you see the stairs on the right-hand side. That same stairwell is there today. You come down those stairs, you make a right, and today you're in the rotunda, but in the 19th century, you were in a restaurant. So the League had two a la carte dining rooms, the restaurant upstairs and the Oyster Cafe downstairs. And I bring this up because Philadelphia, being so close to Chesapeake and the Jersey Shore, had access to fresh seafood, abundance of fresh seafood. And one of Finelli's most famous recipes was oysters finelli. Now, I'm not going to show it to you, but if anybody wants it, I'd be happy to send it to you. So just email me at mundyj@unionleague.org, and we'll send you a copy of oysters finelli, and you can try it yourself. It actually looks really good. So, all right, moving on. So here he is. Finelli's a little older, as you can see. He looks like I love that white cravat. So obviously he's a little better ahead financially, but love the hair and love the wings on top of the hair. It's really a very stylish looking man, isn't he? Okay. So there he is. All right. And this is the oldest menu that we have in the League's collection. You can see it's a pre-printed menu. And then they simply printed on it, Union League House, Philadelphia, December 3rd, 1879. All right. But you can see it says, served by N. Finelli. And you would see that on all of the menus for the rest of the time that he worked at the League. Right. So apparently his reputation was such that the League was happy to have him put that down because you knew you're getting a good meal in Philadelphia. So let's just think of Nunzio as the Martin Hammond of his day, right, if you will, okay? And I'm sure Martin would have, and I know Martin would appreciate that analogy itself. All right. So here are two different menu covers from the aforementioned reception and dinner to U.S. Grant on December the 23rd of 1879. Now, they're relatively small menus, believe it or not, because there wasn't a lot of food on the menu because they're feeding hundreds of people. So it was, think of probably something more along the lines of a modern buffet in today's world. So, and there were at least 2 other menu covers. These are the 2 that are the most viewable, if you will. And here's the menu. This is the inside of one of the menus. So you can see how it's simply flipped open. And I know it's a little hard to read, so I'm going to go here. We have the menu itself. You can see the entrees, raw oysters, stewed oysters, salmon a la mayonnaise, and as you can see, chicken croquettes, fried oysters, pain de foie gras au Bellevue. So you can see that Finelli's earlier training in Naples clearly was done by a French chef working in his father's hotel, because Finelli's cuisine is going to be French-based, not Italian-based, all right? So keep that in mind. But look at all the oysters, deviled crabs, chicken croquettes, chicken salad. I'm getting hungry. And here we have the bottom half of the menu, the desserts, the meringue, the charlottes, okay, confiture. And at the very bottom, the banquet rooms open at 9 o'clock. So they obviously had a reception receiving line before the food was served. And at the bottom, served by Nunzio Finelli. So there's the stamp of approval right there. All right, here we have some other menus from 1880. The one on the right-hand side is February 26th of 1880. Left February 9th of 1881. And again, you can see how simple they are. There's no refrigeration yet, so you can't go out and store tons of food and then expect to have a menu with 30 to 40 different items on it. Instead, it was not like that at all. A few appetizers, a few entrees, desserts, always accompanied by wine. As you can see on the right-hand menu, your entrees, your appetizers are being served by sherry, and then a sauterne, which would go especially good with the oysters, right? Crisp white wine. Your beef, all right, with a rosé, and the spring lamb, especially the spring lamb chops, would make sense. And then you also have a pomeroy, which is as you can see, a carte blanc white, and then the terrapin underneath would have a chambertin, which is a really delicious red if you've never had one. So you can see how wines were paired with food, even at this point in the 19th century. It's not something new to us in more recent times itself. So, all right, what do we have next? Oh, and again, in case you're wondering, lower right-hand corner. Oh, and by the way, you can see coffee and cigars. Look how it's spelled, S-E-G-A-R-S. But then again, there's the trademark, served by Nunzio Finelli, right-hand corner. And here's Nunzio, again, as an older man now. At this point, he's probably the wealthiest he'll ever be. It was clear that he was never a wealthy man, but he's made a good living out of the businesses, the cafes, and working at the league itself. And again, look at that top hat, and look at the smile on his face. Okay, here's a man who made it. All right, another league menu from December 22nd of 1881. Right, now this is the inside, but look at that fringe and the tassels around the outside. And that's what the covers look like. Aren't they neat? Now keep in mind, in the 19th century, obviously, game and fowl were more popular than they are today. So hence the images that you see here on the menus. But really neat stuff. And here we have another menu, the one on the right-hand side. The one on the left is not a league menu, but the one on the right is. You can see it's October 19th of 1882, complimentary dinner to Joseph Moore Jr. by his colleagues of the Committee of Membership, the Union League of Philadelphia. So much like we do today, after the admissions committee has its monthly or even bi-monthly meetings, they always have a dinner together. Well, it's nice to know they were doing it as early as the 1880s. So let's take a look at the menu. Well, there you can see again, Joseph Moore Jr., League of Membership. And in the left-hand corner, there it is. There's the name, N. Finelli. All right. And this is Finelli shortly before he died, I believe. So now he was ill for about a month in March of 1886, and but still okay. But apparently 24 hours before he died, he became unconscious, and he never regained consciousness. So he died on March the 18th of 1886. Died from Bright's disease, by the way. Okay, and this is the Finelli family plot at Mount Moriah Cemetery in Southwest Philadelphia. So that's where Nunzio is today. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. It's a great story. I mean, it really is. So as you can see, the league started in the very beginning with a famous Philadelphia chef, and here we are in 2020, and the league still has a very famous Philadelphia chef in Martin Hammond. So I hope you enjoyed all of that. Now, I'm sure you're all hungry now at all this point. You're running out to the kitchen to get something to eat, so I hope you do. So I hope you enjoyed it. Join us again, I hope, next week for another episode, frolicking episode of Mondays with Mundy. And our thanks to the Union League Legacy Foundation for sponsoring these weekly videos. I hope you're enjoying all of them. Come back and see us next week. But in the meantime, it's still a little crazy out there, so stay safe and stay well. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.